My name is Lumiel, and I would like to introduce you to the first video of what I intend to be many, covering the entirety of the game Bloodborne in what I call a lore-through. It is a playthrough of the game where we are taking particular note of the lore exposed through the literal videos that the game shows you, the environment around us, the storytelling through placement of people, items, things, as well as the item descriptions in the game, and trying to piece it together as it's chronologically exposed within the game, not on the notes in the loading screens, but actually taking a look at everything as it's exposed in the game and casting aside what I've learned through nearly 1,000 hours of playing this game and through the many videos I've watched where more experienced or more studied people have put together all of the things and discovered what they believe. But this will cause us to look at it from a fresh perspective and possibly discover things that we hadn't seen before or assumed, and this will let us have a fresh start and discuss it as it's exposed in the game. This was the opening video, and I want to discuss it after it's finished playing, so I'll just let it play now. And there you have it. There are so few cutscenes in the game that I want to just let them play, and we'll discuss them after. It opens with blood dripping into an IV that is seemingly placed in a person, and it's interesting that blood is going into the IV and into the person. And then we see the large Gothic city that we know is Yharnam, the opening setting of the game. The next thing we see in an alley is a baby carriage. So we know that blood is important, and and that baby carriage as kind of the opening object beyond the things that we've seen before, I find interesting. It then shows the wheelchair and the man in the wheelchair that is an interesting, I won't say character, but archetype in this game, followed by a large group of people with torches and weapons heading down through the street. The people are traveling with dogs, which I think that if you look at the state the dogs are in, they look almost rotted, but they are more beastly than they should, with milky eyes, and it's as if they've either lost what they are or grown more into what they are. And if that has happened to the dogs with these people, what have the people become? Underneath the hats and underneath the coats, are they more beastly? Are they more human than human? Are they becoming more what they are as well? Are they losing what they are? So after that, it cuts to the hunter pulling a beast using the saw blade, pulling a beast into an alley, almost as if slinking behind that group, hiding from them, doing his task in secrecy without trying to draw their attention. So what are they doing in conjunction to what is he doing? Are they also hunters? They had torches as if they're seeking someone, or some things, and they maybe are also after these beasts, or are they the beasts themselves? They seem less beastly than the thing he has killed. But then immediately after that, it cuts, and you also see the hunter killing people that look like the people with the dogs and the torches, and so if the hunter hunts beasts and he's hunting them as well, it would imply that they are becoming more beastly than they originally were. The final scene in Yharnam, as far as we can tell, shows a very, very beastly creature. Get used to hearing beast, people. A very beastly creature with the hunter holding a gun to its head. And right before the trigger is pulled, we see the beast's eye. And it's also milky in a way, but more interesting is the way that the iris and pupil have kind of started blending together, like the iris is encroaching down into the pupil. It is an interesting artistic take, but I think it also probably means something, the eye of this beast. So after that, we see the hunter walking through catacombs, it appears, an underground structure, and unlike werewolves and hunters in the streets of a gothic city, this sees the hunter looking at things, statues and candles, and it seems to be an ancient structure with ancient rituals, and among them is a skull of a beast that the hunter reaches for as he is attacked, and that is the end of the video. So I'm going to play offline and start a new game, which will load another video, which we'll talk about on the other side.
Oh, yes. Pale blood. Well, you've come to the right place. Yharnam is the home of blood ministration. You need only unravel its mystery. But where's an outsider like yourself to begin? Easy, with a bit of Yharnam blood of your own. But first, you'll need a contract.
All right, so we saw a man in a wheelchair that looked very much like the man in the wheelchair in the opening video, and he starts out by saying, "Ah, yes, pale blood." So that would imply that we had asked him about that, and he says, "Ah, yes," as if he's familiar or has at least heard of it. And he says, "You're in the right place. Yharnam is the home of blood ministration." So this place, the city that we're in, is the home of blood ministration, either through creating it or perfecting it, at least in his perspective. And while he doesn't explain what pale blood is, perhaps he's just saying because Yharnam is so familiar with blood, it's the home of this technique, that if we're looking for something called pale blood, we're in the right place. And he describes us as an outsider. He says, "Where's an outsider like you to begin?" Well, with some Yharnam blood of your own. But before we get our Yharnam blood, he says we need to sign a contract. So we've come to Yharnam from outside. We've asked about pale blood, and it's led us to this person, this place. And he says, well, to get started, you want to go into Yharnam, but you're going to need Yharnam blood in you. And before I will give you that, sign here. So this is the character creator. That's your contract. So we will go with my standard name for I will play as a female character. I'm Lumiel when I play as a male character, Lucatiel when I play as a female. So you enter your name, your gender. Those don't matter. Age does not matter. Really, it is just a visual appearance changed, and you will be able to tweak all of the appearances later. Origin is the first thing that matters some. These are essentially different stat arrangements, and you'll notice all of them are level 10, except this bottom one, which is level 4, Waste of Skin. So they're all arranged so narrowly that it really does not matter what you choose at this point. The only thing that matters, I would say, is your level. Waste of Skin is able to level up 6 more times, pardon me, before it reaches the same level as these. So I like that because it allows you a little more freedom in your stat spread. However, there are stats such as Arcane, which if you have 0 interest in, Waste of Skin you could consider it wasted points in it. So consider things like that when you choose it. But your level is your level. Blood echoes are the experience in the game. So I would say these are meaningless. You're probably going to lose these before they're of any use to you. Vitality is your health. Endurance is how many actions you can take before you've run out of this and it needs to refill before you can do more actions. Strength is a stat that, along with certain weapons, makes them more powerful. It's called scaling. Certain weapons scale with different stats. In this case, strength, think of big bludgeoning weapons. Skill, think of more bladed, tiny, fast weapons. Blood tinge goes along with guns typically. Every character should become familiar with guns, though think of them not as guns as we think of them. Think of them as a burst which causes an interrupt or allows you to stun an enemy and take an action against them that is more powerful. It does not do much damage on its own, although there are certain weapons that scale with this, and those are more unique and found later in the game. Arcane is magic. It's what they refer to as magic here. It is not easy mode as it has been in some FromSoft games. Arcane is actually a little bit more difficult to get used to and to use in this game. But I do like that Waste of Skin allows me to level up on my own terms more. They all have a little tiny backstory, but I don't find too many of them interesting other than Lone Survivor, which is the lone survivor of a lost hamlet. This is interesting because lone survivor of a lost hamlet combined with his terminology of calling us an outsider, I do find interesting. You could apply that to all of them, but this one has a sadness and mystery to it. Waste of Skin, you are nothing, talentless, you shouldn't have been born. I think that's pretty neat too, as far as a backstory. The you should not have been born is especially powerful. I am going to go with this. Now, for appearance, I have already created a preset. This may look strange, but if you are a person who recognizes the name Lucatiel, you maybe will get what I'm going with. I don't know any way to get it more accurate to that character than what I've done here, but Lucatiel is a character from Dark Souls 2, a personal favorite side character of mine. It ultimately doesn't matter what your character looks like because you will mostly be seeing this with a hood on, so you won't even be seeing your character. But here's Lucatiel, the character we're going to play as. Now let's finalize our contract, finish this video, the cutscene video, I mean, not the one we're recording, and then we will talk a little bit about the video and our environment.
Good. All signed and sealed. Now, let's begin the transfusion. Oh, don't you worry. Whatever happens, you may think it all a mere bad dream.
You found yourself a hunter.
Okay, so a thing that I noticed that I did not mention before is the man in the wheelchair has his eyes bandaged over, ostensibly making him blind. So his eyes are either damaged, missing, whatever. And he says, let's begin the transfusion. Whatever happens, you may think it a bad dream. We then have a vision. This is the thing he was kind of teasing, that we may think it's a bad dream. And then it is a pool of blood that a wolf, huge, monstrous wolf, crawls out of. And with its long claws reaching towards us, begins to burn and be burnt away and retreat. And we see that what caused that were these tiny creatures that are pale and very odd looking, that we don't know what they are yet. But they burnt away the beast and sent him retreating. I believe that this is symbolic of what is going on inside us during the transfusion. I think he's familiar with when people get this transfusion, they have visions such as this, and that many just think, wow, that was a trippy dream. But I think it's saying more about what the transfusion is doing to us, what the Yharnam blood inside of us is doing. So we find ourselves in Iosefka's clinic. Who is Iosefka? We don't know yet, but it is a dark clinic with lots of bloody bandages and a sorry state, as you'll see many things are. Lots of medical equipment for rough, disturbing, arduous surgeries. It's a place that has been through a lot, you can tell. We see a note on a chair over here and doors at each side. This door is in the dark, this door is lit, and you'll find that that is a key visual detail that FromSoft likes to do to guide you. Everywhere is dark except, hey, look, a light. Let's head towards that. Except in games, I often like to find where I'm meant to head and then go the opposite way. So back here, we see more medical equipment scattered throughout. Lots of blood, bloody bandages, and then the doors that I referred to, which do not open from this side. So we have been locked in this little room where we have been treated. We've had our blood transfusion, placing Yharnam blood into us, because we were told that in order to find out more about pale blood, we need to seek that in Yharnam. And Yharnam is the home of blood administration, but first we must have a transfusion. And we find ourselves in Iosefka's clinic to get that procedure done. All right, the note. It's handwritten and it says, "Seek pale blood to transcend the hunt." So it was left by the man, by ourselves, by Iosefka. We don't know, but we know that somebody is telling us to transcend this hunt, we need to seek pale blood. So we came here, we asked the man about pale blood, and he said, "Ah, yes, you've come to the right place," etc., as I've said. But we have a note reminding us to seek pale blood, as if somebody knew that's what we were after and knew we would either forget or need reminded to do so, although it adds the element of to transcend the hunt. What the hunt is, we don't yet know. We're an outsider to this place. So let's proceed out these doors and down these steps. Into what appears to be a waiting room of sorts outside of Iosefka's clinic, the sick room, or her clinic, and down here is the sick room, because it looks like, as bad as things were up in the room we were in, it is much worse down here. Lots of beds, lots of bandages, lots of blood, and a huge beast like that one that we saw in our vision. So he is feeding on a corpse. And it is possible to beat this creature, though I think canonically we're meant to die to it, so that's what I'll do. The dot you'll see is me locking onto the creature, and above it is a life bar. So let's draw its attention, and I will die as I said. We died. We had no weapons. We had no knowledge of the way this thing moves. So we're meant to die here, and let's find out what happens when you die. We wake up in a place that certainly seems more peaceful than where we came from. Things are foggy and unclear, and we look up at what appears to be a very old church underneath the moon. And it's called the Hunter's Dream. The Hunter's Dream, we want to transcend the hunt, so we're seeking pale blood. And when we die, we wake up in a place called the Hunter's Dream. We can't die because we wake up in the dream of the hunter, and we're trying to transcend the hunt. So perhaps it is a trap that we're in. So obviously the path wants me to follow this walkway up to this structure along these gravestones. And in front of us is a thing, a person. We'll find out as we approach. Off to the left is another path lined with gravestones leading up to the church again, underneath the moon. And all around this hunter's dream we're in are these pillars that reach up into the cloudy sky. So, two paths leading up to this church. This that's meant to draw our attention, again with these lights to draw our attention. And over here, let's find out what this is. It's one of those creatures we saw in our vision that burn away the beast. And it says a bath messenger. So this thing it's in is called a bath. And the thing itself is a messenger. And we trade in blood echoes with these to buy and sell items. So, as I said, I like to explore in opposite directions from where the game is guiding us. So let me head down this way. All paths keep leading back up to there. All paths try to return us to the church, except one. It's a gate that is closed, looking out into a path with more gravestones. And now I will take the left path, because that seems to be the main one. And let's look at these real quick. It says a makeshift altar. A short ritual root chalice is required to conduct a ritual. We don't have the item to do whatever we need for the makeshift altar. Then the first ritual altar. A holy chalice is required to conduct a ritual. Again, missing an item. So each of these is a ritual altar, gravestone. And then there's a lone tombstone off to the right, which we can't interact with in any way. Behind it is another door closed to the church and another bath, but this one says buy with insight. The bath appears linked to the nightmare, but there are no messengers. We've just recently learned about the Hunter's Dream and about messengers. So, along with the dream, it mentions a nightmare. The bath is linked to the nightmare, but there are no messengers. And it's saying with insight I can buy things. Insight is another new term for us. This door is also closed, but there is a path off this way, so let's see where it leads. So, this path leads to a few things here. One is a stump with smoke and darkness in it. It says Stump Messenger. The stump is also linked to the nightmare, but there are no messengers. And then there are lots of little dead ends that give us views of this surrounding area. Now, an interesting thing is a little practice run I did before I started this, and there was a person in a wheelchair sat here looking out upon that. And this time I've done everything the same, and that person is not here. We'll still discover the person, but I find it interesting that this person was sat sleeping facing out this way, and this time the person is not here. Alright, so I know who the person is, but we haven't been introduced to this person yet, and I will wait until then. We also have the second path leads up to the right, and the first spot says Yharnam Headstone. Awaken at a selected location in Yharnam. First floor sickroom, which was the sickroom at the bottom of the steps in Iosefka's clinic. So we would select this to return to the place where we died, or the nearest lamp to where we've died. But before I do that, let's walk up this path, stopping first. See those over there? That's where the sound comes from. But to inspect this. An abandoned doll. So there is a doll here that has been abandoned outside of the church. And more messengers have popped up along the path. I'm just going to check something here. So, the messengers are offering us a trick weapon, and we have to choose from one of these, and this will be our starting weapon, wielded in the right hand, our strong hand. So, this is the primary weapon you use to start with. And we have three options: saw cleaver, which we saw in the opening video; hunter axe, think of a strong, massive axe that can be wielded one-handed or grown to be a two-handed axe; and a threaded cane, which acts as a stick to hit things with, which extends into a whip. Or the saw cleaver, which is folded shut, kind of acts like a fist weapon with massive serrated blades on the outside, or can be extended to get some reach, and it acts like a pole arm with a serrated blade on the end. I typically use the hunter axe. Think of it as making the game slightly easier to start, but we want to go with the saw cleaver. I want to go with this because it seems to be the canonical weapon that FromSoft intended for this game. Next, they are offering us a sidearm, a firearm. These are wielded in the left hand, and like I said before, don't think of them as powerful guns that deal damage. They do deal damage, but not to the extent that our right-handed weapon does. Think of these as interrupts. If something is attacking you, you can fire it, which will momentarily stun it, and if timed right, will actually stun them long enough that you can perform a massive visceral attack, which is a powerful counterattack. So we have two options, pistol and blunderbuss. Blunderbuss is a shotgun which is pretty weak but easy to hit the enemy with, but it's so scattered it doesn't really provide much use. It's hard to get those long stuns from it. It's easy to get quick interrupts, but if you really want a precision sidearm, you want this, the pistol. And I will just equip those real quick. So now I have the pistol in my left hand and the saw in the right hand, saw cleaver. And now we're given a notebook, which allows us to leave messages with these loyal servants to share them with hunters and other worlds for online use. It's to leave notes in the world which will be useful to other players. And we're locked out of the church. All doors are locked. We have many tombstones in proceedingly worse states as they lead up there, and only one with these messengers reaching out of them. So I am going to stand here, and we will end our first video at this point, because we have been introduced to the world. We've been introduced to the basics of what we're intending to do, both in the video and in the game. And we have died and seen the hunter's dream, and in the next section we will take on Yharnam and travel through Yharnam up to at least the first boss, I'll call it, the first boss, and possibly on to the second boss, depending how we do. So I intend to explore very slowly, so I'm thinking I want to keep these videos half hour to 1 hour so that they're, more bite-sized. So let's go ahead and end it here, and we'll pick up and we'll continue on into Yharnam in the next video. All right, and thank you for watching.